Hi. Happy full moon. Happy full moon in Cancer. For me, it's my lunar return. I have a Cancer moon. Beautiful energy. Um, where I'm at, we had some lovely snowfall come through last night. And I always feel like that's such, especially with this time around the full moon, it's really cleansing and reharmonizing the energy of the space and kind of giving us that blank canvas to start anew from. Uh, I hope that wherever you are, you're staying warm and comfortable and that you're experiencing a beautiful connection to yourself and the world around you today. As I was prepping for this, I was setting my decks out and I was using this mullein and rosemary bundle to cleanse everything. And this is just a loosely wrapped bundle of herbs. And if you work with smoke bundles, you'll know that sometimes as the bundle burns down, it will singe and kind of burn the thread or yarn, whatever's used to wrap it, and they'll come loose. And so then you have to kind of take it and pull it down and like retie it or rewrap it. And sometimes you have to pull some other strands from further down and reconnect. For me, it actually kind of burned loose a few separate strands at one time. So I ended up having to pull multiple strands and tying them together so that it would hold firm. And I felt like this was ironically like a very beautiful message to kind of start off this reading and this collective full moon energy update about it reminded me of a phrase that came up when I was teaching a class this weekend that came through, and it was like, well, look at the energy of transmutation. To transmute something, you have to discard something. Something has to leave, be burned away in order for something new to come through. And of course, this isn't revolutionary. Like this is something that's discussed often about the importance of needing to release things in order to make way for new. But I felt like when this happened with the bundle, it was just kind of reiterating that energy. And as the fire and the smoke used to kind of cleanse and reharmonize, broke the bonds of these threads, I then was called to use multiple threads at one time to retie it, to bring it back and bind it stronger than it was before, using the supports of other threads. And there's a lot that can be said about the importance of like when things fall away and when we're kind of going through the flames, that oftentimes we do come back stronger. And it's important to kind of intentionally, when we're going through these periods of transformation and cleansing and transmutation, that we intentionally prepare ourselves to come back stronger and with a more supported foundation, so that we can step forward transformed in a more authentic way, and in a way that strengthens us to carry on and meet these new paths and new opportunities with this reformed strength and support. So just fun little divine messages to start us off. It's really beautiful when you're present and you're aware and you're kind of on the spiritual path and you're kind of reacquainting yourself with yourself and the world around you, and really being intentional with your actions and the things that you observe around you, how many messages and wisdoms can come through from these little simple moments as burning a bundle of herbs. So let's get started. I do want to pull some cards, and I wanted to start with this deck. Baby deck, it's still in its growth period. And this is my energy weaving deck that I've been playing around with for personal use. And the card that's coming up that kind of is going to be like a theme for this Cancer full moon, and this energy coming up now that really will continue on for the next month until we hit the next full moon, is the tenderness card. And this card in particular is a really very simple representation of an energy weaving movement that I do that represents tenderness and creates that energy and infuses it into what I'm working with. And I really love this card and this movement in particular, because it always reminds me of like a mother rubbing her child's back and soothing them, and when they're feeling stressed or sad or having trouble sleeping. So it's a very comforting, nurturing energy, which is right on brand for a tenderness card. And especially with this Cancer full moon and the importance of kind of nurturing our emotions and our inner child and being gentle with ourselves, and how multifaceted the idea of tenderness can be. Because tenderness doesn't always have to mean being like avoidant or sorry, I was hearing bells. It doesn't always mean being avoidant or not telling like the whole truth, or not using your full voice out of fear of it being too much for someone else, or it being too harsh. Sometimes tenderness means being open and saying your full truth, and speaking from that heart space, and that heart space, while tender and from a place of compassion, doesn't mean that it minces any words. It can still be very full and bold and have a lot of heat behind it, but still come from a place of being compassionate and tender, and wanting the other person that you're like engaging with, even if this is yourself, or even if you're talking about more macro ideas, such as like societal things. It comes from a place of wanting the best for everyone, and wanting the best for yourself, and wanting to be able to be in a space that's vulnerable and open to that vulnerability. And sometimes we have to clear out a lot of things that are restricting us from being able to be tender. And sometimes that's not easy. And sometimes that requires some difficult conversations and difficult restructurings. And that can be on a personal level, an interpersonal level, and on a societal level. So I think that's really beautiful that that came up kind of as that theme for this energy reading today. I did want to pull some from my vice versa tarot. I really love this deck, and I find that I'm always called to use it when there's a lot of depth and nuance required for a reading. And what's really special about this deck is that, say this is the moon card, which came up, which is perfect and beautiful for this full moon. On this side, we have what typically comes up more traditionally in the Rider-Waite Tarot, with the moon and the crab and the dogs and all the water. And then we also have the other side, which actually shows a new moon. It's a very different energy. And this speaks to that nuance, and that there's two sides to every coin, two sides to every conversation, two sides to every perspective. And this can come in a lot of different ways, and especially with this moon card coming up, of course, for this full moon. And specifically with the energy of the moon card, looking at our emotions and how there's so many layers and levels to our emotions. We have like our more subconscious emotions that are hidden deep beneath us and tend to come through as layers or after effects to other things that we say. It's the meaning behind the meaning, the message that lies in between the words. And then we have like our more present emotions, the emotions that we recognize when we can, the ones that we're able to more easily verbalize and say, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling joyful and happy. And then we even can go a step further, and then we have our highest self emotions. And these are those emotions and those kind of expressions of being that tend to kind of embody these other ideals and this more authentic expression of ourselves. It's the expression of our emotions that exist beyond the programming and distortions that society and our upbringing has kind of placed within the way that we perceive and relate to our emotions. And even when we get into situations where we have difficult experiences with others, and we always say, there's two sides to an argument, and or even three. There's their perspective, there's the other person's perspective, and then there's the truth. And of course, there's a little bit of truth throughout all of it, but that really just speaks to where like our perspectives are unique to us, and there's always going to be some inherent biases based on those perspectives that can kind of distort the way we see things and the way we experience the world around us. And that doesn't necessarily always have to be a bad thing. Our perspective is unique for a reason, and we're meant to have these unique perspectives and to navigate them and to kind of go on this journey to explore why our perspective is the way that it is, and how we can better understand that, better understand ourselves, better understand the way that we relate to the world around us, so that we can show up in a way that feels more fulfilling to us. And so I think that's a wonderful little message um, to be focusing on today. And then we have the Magician's card. And so there's two sides to this. There's the side that everyone sees, which is, of course, the more traditional Rider-Waite. Everything's very put together. We have the shooting star. Very beautiful card. And then we have the back, which is a little more bare. We have the flower rooting, blooming behind him and around him. And we have the tree of life coming through here. And I feel like this is a time where a lot of us are really coming into a deeper awareness of who we are. And I feel like we've all been through the flames a little bit lately. And going through those flames presents us with this opportunity to transmute that which either was never us to begin with, or that we're choosing to leave behind and transform into a version of us that feels more authentic and true. And of course, that requires leaving things behind, leaving people behind, leaving experiences behind, mindsets behind, so that we can reframe our perspective in a different way that allows us to feel more at home in our bodies, at home in our environments, and to feel more proud and fulfilled by the way we see the world and the way we navigate it, in a way that maybe is not any less without fear or without uncertainty or without difficulty, but allows us to move through those experiences with that skill set of the magician and that ability to know that we have that inner power to navigate these experiences that come our way on this path that we're walking in the way that we feel more prepared for, and we feel more confident in our ability to handle what is coming our way, because we've been through these flames. For many of us, we've been through these flames over and over and over again. And that's a painful, terrible, beautiful thing. A lot of these things were experiences we maybe didn't deserve, maybe experiences that were deeply painful and rocked our foundations and rocked our perception of who we are and what we're capable of, and our trust in the world around us and our ability to handle it. And yet I want to congratulate you that you're still here. You're still pushing forward, even if the days feel more difficult. Some days feel more difficult than others, even if you still feel uncertain and you don't know what is happening in these next steps, and you just feel like you're the fool card about to take a big leap off of a cliff, and you're not sure what's going to be underneath, if there's going to be something soft to catch you or if there's going to be jagged edges, but you're still here, you're still stepping forward, and you're still being open to what you're capable of and what these next experiences will teach you. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think this magician's card popping up is really reinforcing the fact that you are capable of whatever comes ahead, and whatever is in store for you, you have everything within you that you need to tackle it. And maybe there'll still be some experiences that come up that you don't deserve. We live in a very complicated society with a lot of damaging barriers and mindsets and things in store that I just sat my deck down to get a bottle of water. And we have the world card sitting there underneath, just reaffirming that, yeah, the world is a difficult place. And, you know, there's going to be things that come up that aren't right. They're not harmonious. They're a byproduct of a lot of greed and unharmonized selfishness and judgment, that it comes from a very dark and kind of malicious frame of mind. And so, of course, no one can promise you that anything is going to be easy. And for me, honestly, I would rather be told that, yeah, the steps ahead are not all going to be perfect and easy and a bed of roses to step across. Sometimes, even with this bed of roses, there's still going to be some thorns that might prick you here and there. But knowing that I have the tools to navigate it regardless, and that not just myself, but that I have supports around me, that when I feel like I don't have the strength to move forward, that they'll either remind me that it's okay to take a break and rest, or that they'll pick me up and help me take those next steps, and that I don't always have to do things alone. And I hope that's something that you have in your life, or that you are in the process of discovering for yourself in your own journey. I'm going to pull from my Soul Truth deck. I love this deck because it has a way of presenting questions to you in a way and a timing that help you kind of spark that curiosity to know yourself more deeply, and to challenge yourself to explore what holds you back and what is capable of propelling you forward. We have, what passions am I ready to pursue? And I think that's beautiful. That might be something that you want to explore more deeply during this full moon and this month ahead. And really, especially when we're in this month of January, we're in this this new year. And or if you follow the lunar calendar, we're approaching a new year. And it's a beautiful opportunity to take a look at what activities, projects, goals, habits, anything like that we have in our life that we're passionate about. And looking at them and finding opportunities to incorporate them more into our life. Because especially in a life where we have a lot of our foundations being shook up, sometimes we can become so focused, especially in this very capitalistic society that we live in, it can be very easy to get into a place of feeling like we always need to be working on the next thing. And that whenever we have a moment of peace or a moment of rest, there's this energy of guilt around it. And this energy of feeling like we need to be using that time more wisely and using that time to work on a project and like work on something that will bring us monetary value, or even if it's not an immediate monetary value, something that society has deemed to be valuable, and that it's okay to do things purely because you enjoy them and that they bring you that joy and that it invokes that passion and makes you feel good, and that that is more than enough, and that is a very deep um, point of value that should be uplifted more, even if that is just resting in your bed and watching TV or taking a nap or coloring in a book or something like that. That's very important. But for some of you, this card might be speaking to ideas that you have floating around in your head that you want to explore, maybe for monetary gain or just for your work in general, or just a project that you want to um, embark on, like perhaps like you've been playing around with doing a podcast, or perhaps you have this idea of something you want to create, something you want to make, or something that you want, a project you want to you would love to see in your community, something like that. And you're being asked to take this time to um, put into form the why behind why you want to do this thing. And I find that once we kind of bring that why into reality, whether it's through writing it down, through speaking it aloud, maybe vision boarding, once we bring that why into reality, it tends to kind of spark those propellers to get it moving. And when we kind of have that fire burning of like, I want to do this because it will make me happy, because it will challenge me, because it will allow me to have a deeper sense of community, something like that, that it gives us that motivation to begin laying those bricks of those foundations to actually start working on it. So perhaps you may want to sit down on this full moon and think of those things that you have been toying with wanting to do for this new year, and things that you want to do for 2022 and maybe even for the next 10 years, and mark down why you want to do them. And then maybe sit down and write down a few steps, some tangible baby steps that you can do to start bringing that into fruition. Maybe it's you want to create a name for the podcast, or you want to research a wholesaler, or you want to design a logo, or you just want to find the tools that you would need to actually even implement it. Things like that. It doesn't have to be this massive undertaking. It can be as simple as starting a Word document and putting the title on it that this is going to be where I start writing my book, and this is going to be the document it's for. You know, small steps add up. And when we're able to kind of let those small steps build up over time, eventually we look back and realize that we've completed the task with all of these little small steps that built up, and suddenly it can be a great way to start working through imposter syndrome and through these fears of, what if I'm not good enough to do this? What if it's not for me? What if other people make fun of me or laugh at me or think that I'm weird for doing this? Um, and by kind of taking it one very small step at a time, you can start to realize that you can do it. And by putting it into these little manageable little chunks, it doesn't seem so insurmountable. It's not writing this whole 300-page book that you have to do. You need to open a Word document. Is that you need to name your main character, or you need to do something like that. That's like that seems super small, but is important in the broader scheme. It's something that is incorporated into that whole big picture of this passion that you want to pursue. So I hope that that's something that can kind of spark some inspiration for you, and know that I believe in you, and that I know that you're capable of doing it, and that if it's something that excites you and maybe even scares you a little bit, then it's worth exploring. Um, and maybe it turns that into a beautiful masterpiece. Maybe you get halfway down the road and realize that you don't actually enjoy doing it anymore. And you know what? That doesn't mean it wasn't worth doing. It's okay to decide that you didn't want to do it anymore. And sometimes that can even be a barrier to trying it in the first place, because what if I start it and I don't like it? Well, it doesn't mean it was a waste. You didn't waste your time. These moments, when I look back at things that I've done over the years, there's been a lot of projects that I've started and thought were going to be this big thing for me, and that I ended up working on for a while and realizing that I actually didn't like it as much as I thought I did. But looking back, I can see where I needed those skills that I learned when trying this thing later on for a different project, that I did end up enjoying more, and I did end up utilizing and completing, and was part of that beautiful masterpiece of my own life. So I also want to validate that not everything that you start necessarily has to be finished. And I think, maybe that there's someone listening to this that needs to hear that maybe if you have some Virgo energy like I do, where I've had to learn that not everything has to be perfect. I don't have to finish everything if it doesn't feel like it's meant to be finished. And that doesn't mean that I'm a failure, and that it wasn't something that I was meant to do. What else could this mean? And I feel like this is really speaking to just that this idea we've been talking about of looking into this nuance into our lives, and how things can mean so many different things. Even in the previous card where I was talking about, like, this card could mean taking a look at incorporating more things into your life that you do purely for the sake of enjoying it. Or it could mean taking some action towards something that you've been maybe putting off doing, or that you've been inspired to do but didn't feel capable of, and feeling more, and something that will kind of fuel that passion of yours, but you've been kind of afraid to strike the match. and how important it is to really spend some time today and through this coming month to really deepen our perspective and be open to these double meanings and these hidden truths. And I often will say, I was like, two things can be true at the same time, especially in this broader collective that we live in. Two beliefs can be conflicting and they can still be true. They can still hold value and still be meaningful and be true for the person speaking them. And that doesn't decrease their value. In fact, it tends to enhance that value. And when we are kind of working with community and these vast perspectives that we have the honor of coexisting with, that it's important to recognize that what is true for us does not have to be true for other people. What's true for us does not have to be true for other people. And it's okay. And that doesn't devalue these other people who don't believe in what we believe in. And that they're still human and they still are worthy of listening to. And, I find that we're often able to connect and communicate with these people who have differing views from us. And now it requires openness on both ends. It's not something that can just be a one-way street. But when both parties are entering into a conversation with a genuine openness to listen as much as they speak, then we often can still find value from what they're saying, even if at face value, the actual words don't fully resonate, or we don't choose to completely change our perspective. And that ties in back into the moon card that came up and these other cards that are really reinforcing this idea that there's these many different layers of meaning and truth, and that you can resonate behind the idea and the intention and the energy behind something and not resonate with the words being said. And I find that this is really prevalent. This can be like a prevalent idea too with like engaging with social media, and especially where things like Twitter and even Instagram, the format is not really curated and intended for a lot of nuance and explanation and detailed um, articulation. And so a lot of that nuance is lost. And so it's very easy to find a tweet that's a sentence or two long and not fully understand it or not resonate with it or even think it's quote unquote problematic. And maybe it is. That doesn't mean that the person is a terrible person. It doesn't mean that they deserve to be ridiculed or demonized. Though that tweet was not curated with nuance in mind. And so sometimes I think that calls for that energy of curiosity as well as personal boundaries. And what I mean by that is that we kind of have an opportunity to either disengage from this person because we were able to curate our social media feeds to have the voices that we choose and that we want. And if there's a person that's coming into like our sphere and into our realm that really causes a sense of distrust or harm or frustration for us, we have a choice to disconnect them from our realm. There's a beautiful thing called a block button. And at the same time, it's also worth considering the energy of curiosity in this facet. And this can be used as an opportunity to ask this person, well, what do you mean by this in this context? Or how do you think that this truth relates to other people in this sphere, and asking them questions about why they feel the way they do about this subject. You could find through conversation that you actually agree more than you realize, and that, the tweet was taken out of context. And, I'm just using like Twitter and social media as like a example. This can of course be applied just in conversation with other people and things like that. But it's also an opportunity to be curious about why these things affected us in the way that they did, and why they evoked this extreme reaction. And I also want to emphasize that, this isn't validating or explaining away like people who perhaps do have some harmful ideas and ways of viewing the world and viewing other people. That doesn't mean that they're completely right, and that we should just immediately forgive them for, especially when we get into things of like racist ideologies and things like that. This is a different and more nuanced context, but just more so an opportunity to reevaluate how we relate to other people, and how we choose to forgive others or not forgive them. Are we treating other people in the way that we would like to be engaged with? We've all had moments where we were perhaps harmful to someone else, and maybe we didn't realize that what we said was something that could hurt someone else. And maybe we did. Maybe we were in like a very dark place in our lives where we were lashing out intentionally to other people. I think every single person can look back through their life, especially childhood and teenager years, and see places where perhaps they were hurtful or ignorant and said things in a way that were unintentionally or intentionally biased and harmful. And hopefully we've grown through that. And sometimes we need to say something that's quote unquote wrong for someone else to come through and tell us why it was wrong, or challenge our thought patterns or our perspectives, so that we can kind of see where perhaps we've picked up some distorted ideologies or some programming that was harmful. And so sometimes, especially I feel like with social media, but also, like I said, this can also be applied to speaking to other people, like in person, in community, and just a vast array of other examples. A lot of times these things come up as an opportunity to teach each other, and that, a lot of times we have a responsibility of community care to want the best for others and to see the best in other people, and that's important. I think there's such an emphasis on personal boundaries and taking care of yourself first, and this kind of individualistic society, at least in more Western culture, of course, that kind of prioritizes this individualism, where we kind of lose track of community care and our relationship to the whole. And so, of course, taking care of yourself has to be prioritized, because we can't support others if we are supported ourselves, if we're lacking our own mental well-being and our own physical health, and like we're suffering. Sometimes it's difficult to support others, if our glass is half full. So, again, it's this balance and this nuance that has to be had. And, I know that you're very smart and you understand these things. So I don't want to get off on too much of a tangent. And I speak about these kind of things a lot, especially if you're like on my Patreon. So I trust you, and I know that you are capable of deepening this nuance. And again, just kind of circling back to the context of this full moon, this Cancer energy is really guiding us to really open up and dive deeper into these emotional waters, and this relationship between the conscious and the subconscious, the self and the community, and all these different facets and layers and depths that we're capable of experiencing, and really uplifting that. And I wanted to pull from this Hero's Journey deck before I start wrapping up a little bit, and see what part of the hero's journey this full moon is speaking to. And it's the "You've won the lottery" card. Make room for wonderment. And I think that's really beautiful. And it's with all of these kind of like critical and nuanced ideas being presented. I think this also circles back around to that tenderness and being like, it's okay to have hope, and it's okay to look for the joy in life. And that, like I said, I think we've all been through the flames a little bit lately, and trust that it wasn't for nothing, and that those flames were clearing some things out to make room for some beautiful opportunities and experiences. And that, yeah, it may not all be perfect. And there might be some thorns scattered in the rose beds a little bit, but beautiful things are coming. I think all of our foundations have been shook up lately. And I hope that you're kind of in a place now where you're starting to like find your footing again. And that as you kind of reestablish your new foundation and find your footing, as you kind of like stretch and kind of recenter after this rocky period, that you're gifted with something beautiful to look to. And I think with that, Spirit's telling me that I have said what needs to be said. Thank you for listening. Bye.